I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street. Welcome back, Streetwalkers. This episode is with global credibility expert Mitchell Levy. In this episode, we talk about where Mitchell grew up and what got him into what he does now. And he's known as the AHA guy. He helps people write books about whatever it is that they're an expert in, and he helps publish them and make them Amazon bestsellers. He also gives tips on how to promote yourself and your business with ease and without being overbearing or pressuring in any way. We talk about some of the key components that make someone successful and trustworthy. And we talk about how Mitchell can help you write your book about whatever your expertise is. This was a lot of fun. I hope you go online and check out Mitchell's TEDx talk. It's easy to find. Just search TEDx and Mitchell Levy. And this is my conversation with the AHA guy, Mitchell Levy.
Yeah, talk to me, yeah.
Welcome to Fascination Street Podcast, Mitchell Levy. How are you doing today, Mitchell?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I am wonderflonium. Thank you for asking. So, Mitchell, first of all, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to hang out with me on Fascination Street. We're going to have a lot of fun, and hopefully, with your help, mostly your help, a lot of weight on your shoulders, we're going to provide my audience with a whole lot of really cool information, and we're going to tell them where they can find more.
That is absolutely true. But did you actually say wonder phenomenon? What word did you use?
I said I am wonderflonium.
Okay, that's a good one.
Thank you. So Joss Whedon, so a few years ago, he won Emmys for it for internet. It was an internet show, a long time ago, before that was really a thing. I guess it was a 3-part movie, but it was like 3 15-minute parts. So it's like a 45-minute movie. And it was called Dr. Horrible's Sing-Along Blog. And it starred Nathan Fillion and Neil Patrick Harris. It was sort of a big deal to nerds. And in that film, Neil Patrick Harris, the bad guy, was trying to get something from the hero, Nathan Fillion. And what he was trying to get was wonderflonium. And so, for some reason, anytime somebody asks me how I'm doing, I'm wonderflonium, man. Thank you for asking.
Okay, that's really cool.
It's not all that cool, but it's super weird. So,
well, anything that causes people to stop and take reflection and to not have that normal thing happen that we sort of do, that's a good thing. To stand out is a good thing.
Well, thank you. A long time ago, I used to work at Starbucks. I was a barista there, and anytime somebody would come in, we were told, you're supposed to welcome them into the store or whatever, but I would always say good morning. No matter what time it was, I would say good morning. And if it was probably after about 1 o'clock, people would stop what they were doing and look at me all quizzically and say, "Did you say morning?" And I go, "Yeah." And they go, "It's afternoon, right?" And I'd say, "Well, it's morning somewhere." Or I would say, "Well, it's morning in Hawaii, which is where I wish I was. How are you doing today?"
And if you were in a pub, you would say good afternoon, even if it was the morning when people came in.
That is correct. So, Mitchell, tell me about where you were born and raised.
So, East Coaster. I currently live in Silicon Valley, but I was born on the East Coast in New York. The exterior of me is definitely that California kind of laid back, suave type essence. There's still a lot of New Yorker in me. Let's see. My mom and dad got divorced when I was 9. So it was a single mom with 3 kids, school teacher salary. And although we didn't feel it, essentially we were poor. But mom did something that, as a kid was super cool. Like Tuesday nights were Sloppy Joe, and Wednesday night was peanut butter and jelly, and Thursday night was hot dog. It was always the same. And as kids, we're like, man, we get to eat good food, and all our other friends were eating all their other stuff and vegetables and, and different meals. And for mom, we didn't realize at the time it was basically a great way to save money. But it didn't bother us. We thought it was pretty cool. And I think the biggest gift mom ever gave all of us was just simply, it didn't matter who we were and where we're from. We can do whatever we want. We never had any negative perceptions of what we couldn't do in life. Whatever we wanted to set our minds to, we were told we can do.
Wow. And so this was from an early age?
Yeah. From what I remember, I don't know if I remember a whole lot when I was younger, but it was a feeling of like I'd say something and she'd go, yeah, you could do that. And I go, well, that doesn't really work. And I want to do this. You could do that. She goes, you could do whatever you want to put your mind to.
That's really interesting. I love to ask a guest, particularly one who is an expert in their field like you are, I like to ask them where they got the confidence or what made them think they could do it. And so I think that, you just explained that from a very early age, you were basically told you could do anything. And so I think that's really cool. I didn't really come from that. And so that is one of the things that really piques my curiosity about how people got to where they are, is the courage, to put yourself out there and the knowledge that you could do it, even if you're wrong. I just love to find out where people got that confidence. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
But then, of course, it's just practice and trial and error. And nowadays, one of the things I'm doing these days, which is super cool, I'm in the middle of doing 500 interviews on people's credibility. It's a 10-minute credibility episode. So, for those that want to see it, you can go to thoughtleaderlife.com. And it is just fascinating. So I've done 42 so far, 42 in the last 3 weeks. We'll do 500, then I'll step back and I'll see what's going on. And the person I am now, having done just 42, is a different human than I was when I started. And it's just it's such a beautiful thing, because the word confidence is what got me thinking about this. When you ask somebody, what is your credibility to do what you do, right? So that's my third question. What is the credibility that does what you do? And I have to tell you, I've had people who didn't graduate high school. I had people who have a PhD. And education is never mentioned, right? No, like as an afterthought, somebody said, oh, yeah, I have a PhD in this area. But that was the afterthought. One of the most relevant things that people say is a PhD from the School of Hard Knocks. Just trial and error, making stuff happen. And probably the most relevant word I'm going to use is listen. Those people who listen to their customers and adjust appropriately end up moving in the direction that gives them absolute credibility to solve their customers' issues. It's really beautiful.
I think it is beautiful. And listening to and paying attention to who you're interacting with in the present has sort of been a theme off and on of the guests on this show, particularly, when it's actors or comedians or something and they're talking about improv and taking improv classes. And the whole point of taking an improv class is to learn how to listen and then react, instead of, just thinking about what you're about to say while the person is finishing saying what they're saying. So you're not really in the moment.
That's a great. So by the way, if you want to come on the show, I'd love to have you. And then if you have somebody who's particularly good at improv, I'd love to have them. That's such a great observation. I'd like to have that as well.
I will look through my Rolodex and see what I can come up with for you. How's that?
That's pretty cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure. So Mitchell Levy, and it is Levy, not Levy, right?
Thanks for asking. Yes.
All right, cool. Just making sure. So you are known as the AHA guy, and you are a global credibility expert. First, if you will, would you tell everybody what the hell is a global credibility expert?
That's a good question. So what's really fascinating about today's world. So first, I'll just go back quickly let's go back 100 years. I don't think we even had 3 TV stations. So 50 years, we had 3 TV stations. So 100 years, we were an industrial society. And as an industrial society, the people who were recognized thought leaders were people that were given to us by the firms that had money. The recording studios told us who we were going to listen to. Publishers told us who we were going to read. The movie studios told us who we were going to watch. And they had the money, and they sort of dictated the thought leaders who we were going to consume. Nowadays, everyone has a camera and everyone has a microphone. And as a result, Anyone who wants to say I'm a thought leader can do that. Anyone who wants to say I'm going to open up a business and serve a community can do that. And not all those people who I won't talk about the thought leaders, because if by definition, if your audience follows you, you become a recognized expert. But let's talk about people who are in business. People who are in business who say they're in business, sometimes they say what appears to work, but they don't actually execute effectively. And so what gives one person more credibility than another? And that's the thing that I'm particularly good at in today's ever-changing world. So what's a global credibility expert? It is a person who can essentially give you thoughts, ideas on what does credibility mean? And credibility really is trustworthiness. So what makes somebody trustworthy? What makes someone that you want to look for, decide that you want to at least talk to them to see if they're the person who could help solve your problems, your issues. And so I see my mission as helping to define the word credibility. I mean, we know what it is. And to help businesses understand what is it that they can do to make sure they've got the most credibility they should have for the types of services they provide.
Well, that makes sense. I am a small business owner myself, and that's one of the main pillars of trying to stay in business and retaining my customers is, to be likable, to be vulnerable, and, to be trustworthy. So I think that those are great hitting points in any business or venture or whatever. So I think that's really great. What made you decide to start? Well, first, tell everybody how you got there. So I know you went to college and then you went into the corporate world. And then what happened that flipped this switch that made you decide to be a public speaker?
I spent 13 years after getting an MBA. I spent 13 years in corporate. The last 9 years I spent at Sun Microsystems. So the last time I actually worked in corporate as an employee was 1997. And if you remember 1997, it was right at the beginning of the dot-com days. I was in Silicon Valley working for Sun Microsystems. It was just too much demand not to go out and start my own business. By the way, imagine if you're married to me, your spouse
Hold
is
on.
4 months.
Give me a chance. Give me a chance to imagine that.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Now this is going to be harder. You're 4 months pregnant.
Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
And I go to you and say, I think I'm going to leave corporate world and start my own business. What's the first word you say?
Well, I think the first thing I would do is grab my pom-poms and do a cheer. No, I wouldn't. I would say, what the F is wrong with you?
Yeah. Well, so fortunately, I'm lucky enough to have a spouse, been married for 30 years, and her response, a little bit quizzical, okay, honey, can we afford to pay for the baby? And I said, yep, got it covered. That was it on that. So anyhow, the problem when I was in corporate, and you could watch, I did a TED Talk. If you just Google Mitchell Levy TED Talk, it'll pop up. And what happened is that first 13 years of my life, my first mentor, since I told you I was raised by my mom, I never had a male mentor. So if my first male mentor happened to be hedonistic and narcissistic, and so it was actually not a really good mentor. And so although I was only with him for a year, he was with me for 13. And so in corporate, whenever somebody asked me a question, I would never be authentic and give my answer, the one I really wanted to give. I gave the answer I thought my boss wanted me to give. The good news is I threw that away when I started my own business. And in Silicon Valley, Esther Dyson called me Mr. E-commerce. I was the guy going around to companies saying, hey, to realize this is new technology, it's going to change the supply chain. You're going to have to do things differently. It's going to change the way you actually talk to customers and interact with customers. And I actually had some CEOs and some VP of operations laugh at me. And obviously, we know where the world is today. What happened is the dot bomb. So when you're an e-commerce consultant during the dot-com days, that's fantastic. And then in the late 2000, was it 2001? Now I'm getting confused. I think it's late 2001 when the dot bomb came, when the markets crashed. All of a sudden, being an e-commerce consultant was not a good thing.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
Guess what, Streetwalkers? The gear is here. A bunch of you have been asking for quite some time, and now finally it's here. Head over to FascinationStreetPod.com and check out the Gear tab. There, you'll find all kinds of FSP items to tickle your fancy. T-shirts, coffee mugs, sticker packs, pins, buttons, coasters, and my personal favorite, for just $5 you can get one of those weird little phone handle pop thingies. So head to FascinationStreetPod.com and show the world that you're proud to be a streetwalker. Special thanks to my good buddy Stephen O'Reilly from the Bar Star Podcast for these dope drum beats. Check out Steve's work at O'Reilly Drums on Instagram or search Stephen O'Reilly on YouTube.
Let's get back into it.
I started doing a bunch of other businesses that I had going on, ran a CEO networking firm at the time. And then in 2005, I started publishing. What I wanted to do is get to the next industry that was being transformed. And as you know by now, the book publishing industry has been completely democratized. And I just wanted to be part of it. And between 2005 and 2017, I published over 800 books. And now I'm going to drop the bomb. And I was serving the wrong audience. I know. I know, right? So I didn't do bad, right?
Okay.
I mean, I lived a good life, employed good people. I mean, we take 1 month a year. We go to Europe. I invite friends and family. So I didn't do bad. But, and this was towards the end of 2017, what I realized is I always thought the audience I needed to serve was what I wanted. I've always been told that if you want to be a customer of your own business, then it could be a good business. So I always thought I wanted to make it easy for Mitchell Levy to write books. I've now written 62, and we've published over 850. But what I realized is I could tell you a 2 or 3 minute story if you want me to tell you about that.
Do it.
So at the end of 2016, I ran a Kickstarter. I have an online social media tool called AHAThat. And AHAThat is free to use, free to share. There's 50,000 AHA messages. So you can go to AHAThat.com and see it. And in 2016, I was running a Kickstarter to automatically share content from AHAThat to Twitter. So if you wanted to tweet and just put it on autopilot, it's free to use, free to share. It's pretty cool. So I was running a Kickstarter. It hit 250% of goal. By the way, the hint of how to do a Kickstarter that works, take a product or service you offer in real life and offer it at a discount. So we had 20 people who paid us that when they wrote their book, and by the way, I always thought my job was to optimize book writing. I had gotten it down to a 3-step process, 8 hours of time. So at 3 steps, 8 hours, you could write your book, and 20 people paid us at the end of 2016. So let's fast forward a year. End of 2017, I was asked to do a TED Talk, the one I mentioned before, and that got me thinking about the world in a different way. That's what TED Talks do. Like you want to present an idea. You can't be a commercial idea. It has to be an idea worth sharing. And so I started thinking about the world in a new way. And 1 year later, I looked at the results of the Kickstarter. 20 people paid us that when they wrote their book, it would only take 8 hours. We would actually publish it. You want to guess how many people actually wrote their book?
7.
Man, truthfully, I thought it was 20. I kind of thought if I got to the point where it's only 8 hours and a year went by, 20 people would have done it. 7 is being very, very generous. It was 2.
Really?
Exactly. And so then I went to 5 of them and I said, listen, how about pay me my cost and I'll write it for you. So one person said yes. So now I give everyone the 20 the benefit of the doubt. I say there's 3. But you know what that says? 17 people couldn't find 8 hours in a 12-month period to do something they already paid for that would be beneficial for them. Now, can I make it worse?
Please.
You're thinking, how could that be any worse? So I went to my friends in the online learning space, and I went to my friends in the internet marketing space, and I told them what was going on. They go, Mitchell, do you realize that 3 out of 20 is a 15% utilization rate? That's fantastic. Exactly. I'm not in the business to sell you something that you don't use. It just feels wrong from an integrity perspective. It just feels wrong. So that's when in 2018, I started building the infrastructure to have a done-for-you book writing service. And so I created a writing school. We have now, I think, 50 graduates from the writing school. When books come in, we write. So I'll tell you what we do now. So generally speaking, I work with busy, successful professionals who recognize the need for more credibility. They want that credibility with a book, but they have no time. Our solution, if you hire us 4 months from today, we will ghostwrite, publish, distribute, make you an Amazon best-selling author, and you'll spend between 5 to 10 hours. We press the easy button. So that's how I sort of grew and learned and morphed into what I do today. And the very cool part, now that I found my audience, it's the person who cares more about reaching their customer base, the person who cares more about having the credibility they need to open up more doors than the person who is going to sit down and make sure every word they write is proper. Because, when you're writing and publishing a book, it's going to take you 320 hours. I've had people take 1,000. And I'm going to spend 10. So I actually have a service that you can actually buy time. I'm letting you buy 310 hours. If you had an Amazon best-selling book and 310 hours more in your life that you didn't have before, what would you do with it? And the answer is, if you don't close a bunch of business with it, because you're now an Amazon best-selling author, then you're missing the point of your business, maybe.
With regard to people and their businesses and whatnot, can you talk about CPOP, customer point of pain? What does that mean?
I've always been a big acronym fan. So CPOP is customer point of pain. And at the end of the day, it's really simple. And I'd love to ask you, if you don't mind, just answer the question and I'll give you the definition. What is your CPOP? What's your customer point of pain? Like, who are your customers and what problem do you solve for them?
My customers are homeowners mostly and some business owners, but the problem that I saw for them is that they have dirty windows, and I have a window washing company that will change that.
Simple, easy. And the only thing I say, if you can articulate that in 3 to 5 words or 1 to 3 seconds, right? And you did, right? But that's the thing that's really interesting. What's your CPOP? Right? So there might be a way to make that sexy. You and I can talk offline about that. But what happens when I'm doing the credibility interviews on Thought Leader Life, first question, what's your CPOP? The real answer to that question is, do I want to listen? Am I interested? Right? Because what happens, you go to a cocktail party, right? And people say, what do you do? Well, if you answer that, that would be interesting. If I had a question about windows or keeping them clean or how often I need to have them clean to make sure they're respectable in a home or a business, right? I mean, if I had those questions, I'd follow on. If I didn't, I would change the topic. But if I said, what do you do? And you spent 2 to 3 minutes, I'm going to look to get away as soon as possible. And that's true whether it's window cleaning, writing a book, or anything else, right? And so we have so much information coming at us, and we have to be authentic. We have to have integrity. In some cases, we need to show vulnerability, right? And the interesting part is when we have a conversation with somebody, business owners make a huge mistake all the time. They go to a network event, they go to a cocktail event, they go to a family thing, and they're trying to sell whoever they're in front of their service. And that's the mistake. The way I always think about it is I want to plant a seed in the head of the person I'm interacting with so that they're going to recommend me to their friend who needs me. So I'll tell you, I'll bring up my wife again. She would often go, hey, Mitchell, you can't sell all the time. So we went to a family wedding and she poked me, says, Mitchell, no selling. Now, I don't actually ever sell. I just share a way of the world that somebody could have a better future, right? If we love our service, in your case, you don't sell. You're like, you ever have a problem cleaning windows? Wouldn't it be great to look out and see super clean windows every morning you wake up? And that's pretty easy. I've got a nice service that comes in once a month and we'll make sure it's clean all the time, right? I mean, you could stop there. So what's interesting is I go to this wedding and I actually happen to see a CEO of a Fortune 50 company who I knew was a family member. I didn't know he was coming. And so I've got this edict from my wife, no selling. And I just happened to stumble on to his wife. And I said hi, and she said hi, and she said, who are you related to, and what do you do? And so I had to come up with something that was so quick because I couldn't imagine she would care about what I do, but I wanted to do something super quick. And so that's when I did what I said before. We work with busy. So think about this. her husband, we work with busy, that's him, successful, he's successful, executives who recognize the need for more credibility, that's probably not him, who want that credibility through a book, that was definitely him, but has no time. He has no time. So 4 of those 5 points were him. And then I went ahead and said, and we actually, in 4 months, we ghostwrite, publish, distribute, make the author an Amazon bestselling author, and they spend 5 to 10 hours. We basically press the easy button. Well, that whole thing's about 10 seconds. Well, when the husband came back, the first thing the wife said, hey, you got to talk to Mitchell. He presses the easy button on writing the book. I'm like, damn, this stuff works. And so I didn't sell. And then we said, tell me more. I said, hey, how about we set up time to talk? Yeah, we're at a wedding. Let's enjoy the wedding. Let's set up time to talk. He goes, okay, perfect. And that to me is the C-pop, is when you talk to somebody, who are they in the world and who's the audience they serve? Because if I end up liking you, let's say you and I have a really nice conversation and I end up liking you, I'm going to want to recommend you. Your job is to make it as easy as possible for me to recommend you. Give me a C-pop that I can then share with somebody else.
That makes 100% sense.
Aha.
Aha! So what does your wife say? Was she like, hey, I told you no selling. You were like, hey, I didn't sell anything. I just set up a meeting. Calm down.
She just doesn't want to walk up to me having a conversation and it sounds like I'm selling. So
on your TED Talk, you basically capitalized the B in being seen and being heard. Can you explain why?
Yeah, part of the industrial age. So this is 1920, and just so you know, our entire educational system is based on industrial age concepts, so it's completely flawed. There's still many things that are industrial age society. We're only 50% of the transition from industrial age to social age. And the reason for B is part of the industrial age, the way businesses were run, command and control. The boss was the big cheese, and the boss would say jump, and their employees were expected to say how high. And if you didn't say how high, you were fired. And the boss couldn't show vulnerability because the boss was expected to know everything. Like the employees didn't know anything. The boss knew everything. So the part of being seen and being heard, and the reason for the capital BE is just simply for people to want to do business with you, they have to know, like, and trust you. And if they don't actually see you, like the real you, how could they possibly know you? So it's knowing somebody, and more importantly, how could they possibly trust you? So trust is a component of integrity, authenticity, and vulnerability. So if you have a conversation and you're always right, even when you're wrong, it's kind of hard to trust you, right? So when you interact with somebody who recognizes, like when you and I were first talking, you said, hey, Mitchell, I edited the crap out of this. It's going to be clean. You make any mistakes, I'm going to take them out. What's the first thing I said?
Well, first you dropped the N word. No, just kidding. You said, no, I like the mistakes. Leave them in.
Yeah. Well, the N word I know I'd never drop, but the F word I drop often. And the reason why, because we all make mistakes. It is okay to demonstrate that you're vulnerable. So the interesting part is if you start demonstrating that, they go, oh, maybe I could make a mistake and that's really okay. And by the way, when you're in a situation, you show vulnerability and the person on the other side doesn't accept that vulnerability. Obviously, there are exceptions. You got to ask yourself, is this a person I want to be around? And so that was the B, is to really be you. A lot of times people would say, well, I have a work personality and I have a home personality and I have a friend personality, and they're all different. God, it's really hard to keep up with all that. To me, there's one person. It's me. You get me, whether it's, whether I'm at a family event or I'm with friends or I'm interacting with you. If I don't like you, I'm not going to do business with you, even if you have money. Life is too short. So you're either somebody who I like, who I could potentially be friends with. So you're either somebody in the circle, because if you're a client, you're in the circle. So you're either in the circle, or I'd like to put you in the circle. I like to be friends with you. So what better way than for you to see, like, even if I have a gazillion competitors. Now, just so you know, there's nobody that does anything that I do in the way that I do it. That said, I've got a gazillion competitors, right? It ranges from do-it-yourself, the people who still think it's more important that they write themselves, to there's so many people, some good, legitimate, and some charlatans who will do ghostwriting for you and all that. And so I have a lot of competitors. So the question, why would you want to work with me versus anyone else? Well, because you know exactly what my motives are and you know exactly what my purpose is. And I say it really clear. My purpose is to make whoever I work with, to give them an asset so that their customers see that they're an expert at what they do. So I'm going to create a book that's focused on your CPOP. And it's going to be the best possible asset you can have so that when your customers see the title of your book and they see you're an Amazon best-selling author of the book, which is the problem you solve for your clients, they're like, oh, I should talk to you. And then if they talk to you, if you don't have the big B, if you're not yourself, they may not hire you. So I can't help you with that. But what I can help you with is giving you an asset so people can really see you. And that's what the B is.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
Hey guys, if you like what I'm doing, click the Amazon banner at the top of the homepage on FascinationStreetPod.com and do all of your shopping through Amazon. Once you click on it and it takes you to Amazon, you can bookmark it or add it to your favorites and you won't have to go to my site each time. It helps me keep the show going, and again, thanks for listening.
Let's get back into it.
You know what? I need to be better about that because you, every single time you've had an opportunity, you've said, that's fascinating. And I appreciate that because that is the name of this show. And so I need to be a little bit better about, aha!
Well, that was interesting. I don't think I did that on purpose. So
what's funny is you just ruined it because you said, oh, that's interesting. As far as, I think you mentioned that, if you don't want to work with somebody, it doesn't really matter if they have the money or not. You're not going to work with them because, you don't want to be around them or whatever. There's too much other business out there and life is too short, like you said. And I think that, that applies in so many different aspects of our life. I mean, like I told you, I'm a window washer and I can't count on both of my hands the number of times I've turned down business just because I didn't want to be around that person for the several hours it was going to take to do that job. And then if I did it well, which I do, they would call me back. And so then on a regular basis, I would have to spend, between 6 and 8 hours around somebody that I don't like.
that definitely does not sound like fun.
Well, it's not worth it, right? So
Right.
I agree with you. Well done.
Well, thank you. That's fascinating, Noah. Thank you.
I heard you talk previously in another situation about maximizing our lives through collaboration. Can you explain a little bit what you mean by that?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. When you get a question, like whatever I said way back when, I'm going to say something different now. Okay. Here's what's really fascinating about like a publisher, right? What publishers used to do, or anyone who's in business, we could even take you. What happens if, in addition to window washing, it turns out that you notice that houses need alarm systems? Well, you could actually white label alarm system product, and then you could then deliver alarm systems and window washing. And that would be pretty easy for you to do. So for me, I don't like this word white label anymore because I want to show credibility to the people I'm working with. So if I was in your shoes, I'd want to collaborate with somebody who puts in alarm systems. And when I get to somebody's house and I know they need alarm systems, say, listen, I got a buddy who's really good at this. I think you should talk to this person. So for me, I do, and my team does the Amazon best-selling campaign, but I collaborate with so many great people. The person I've recommended the most recently, just a beautiful soul who's an integrated marketer. Put up your website, put up your social media, make sure you've got a good landing page where the right leads come in, make sure that you got your newsletter that works well so you have a mailing list that's growing. I mean, a bunch of stuff. And everyone I've sent her way just absolutely loves her. And I've done a credibility episode with her. So now what I do is I send people to a 10-minute episode where they could actually see with the real B who that person is. The same is true. I got a firm I work with that does a 10-city tour. So if you want an Amazon best-selling book and a 10-city tour, I've got a firm, and I'm not going to white label it. I'm going to share the firm. So life is so much better with collaborators because I'm working with collaborators who have the same opinion about life that I do. And maybe I'll just share my opinion. I really like the old days where we lived in a village. Not that I actually lived in a village that way, but let's just assume, and let's say you have a party on Friday night. On Tuesday, you're going to walk into Sam the Butcher, and you're going to shake Sam's hand. You say, hey, Sam, good to see you. Have that normal conversation. And then you're going to say, hey, I got a party on Friday. It's so important. I've got a cook coming. Could you drop off good quality steak by 2 o'clock? Sam's going to look you in the eyes, give you a big smile, shake your hand, and then you're going to leave. You know what you didn't talk about? You didn't talk about it absolutely getting there. You didn't talk about quality. You didn't talk about price. Because you know with 100% certainty that you're going to get the steak delivered on time. It's going to be great quality, better than you expected, and you're going to pay less than you probably expected. That's the world I live in. And so when I talk about everyone having a microphone and a camera, there's so many people selling snake seed oil with promises that they can't deliver. For me, the partners I work with, very simple. What is your price point? What is your KPI? What is the key performance indicator that you're going to measure? And then what happens if you don't deliver on what you say you're going to deliver? And so if you're in my network, if you're a collaborator I work with, what I'm going to be 100% confident in, that when you're working with the client that I'm giving a book to, that they're going to get exactly what you say, or you know what to do if you miss. That to me is collaboration. So who do you want to play with? And if you figure out who you want to play with and what rules to live by, then you don't have to be in the room to make sure your customers are taken care of. And to me, customer satisfaction, making sure my customers get the best that they can, that's the most important thing for me. And so that's where the collaboration comes in. I can make myself a whole lot bigger, but I don't have to be bigger by having my company do more stuff. I can be bigger by showcasing other people's credibility and saying, listen, I love this person. They've done work for me. I think you should use them, and this is how you would use them. And once I've taken that stance, here's the cool part. People listen to me because I don't have a vested interest. It's just simply, listen, I've seen so many people who can do, and you fill in the blank of the service. I like this one, and I've chosen this one to be in my stable because. And people go, oh, okay. So what happens, I'm passing my trust in them. I'm giving the trust you have in me, I'm actually giving it to the partners I work with. So by definition, I only want to work with people who are going to absolutely deliver. Does that make sense?
100% sense. I do like that.
Fascinating.
It is. Aha!
You got to put in that cue there.
Yeah, there you go. So a while back, or way earlier in the interview, you said that once you left the corporate world, you basically stopped that process of answering the way you thought your boss wanted you to answer. And you said that when you went into business for yourself, you sort of stopped that practice. Can you tell me why you stopped doing that, or what made you think that that was something you need to stop doing?
So I actually really going to say that's a very fascinating question. So let me say what I said. So for 13 years, I answered the question that I thought my boss wanted to hear. And then when I started working to myself, who was the boss? Well, besides my wife, of course.
I was going to say.
Besides my wife, the boss was me. And so then I got to give the real answer, right? I got the answer that I really thought made sense. And I said this in the TED Talk, which is really, really shocking. The first time that a client, I was doing my first job when I started, as much as I wanted to do strategic consulting, my first job was doing SEL for companies. And the first client told me their strategy, their plans, showed me the mock-up of the websites and said, what do you think? And I would have given an answer that I thought my boss would have wanted, which would have been a positive beat thing. And I said, well, I think it sucks, because that's actually how I felt. And by the way, it's so funny because I literally, I don't know if I actually crossed my arms, but I was prepared to be fired like on the spot. And he turned around and looked at me and said, he just looked up and gave me real attention. He goes, God, nobody has ever talked to me that way. Tell me why. Tell me more. And it was very empowering for me to actually share my opinion and have people see it and feel comfortable with it. Now, some people, I have to be honest, some people don't like my opinion. And that's okay, because I won't share it unless I'm asked. But if I'm asked, expect honesty, and you may or may not like it. So I think what happened is when I realized that I was in control of my destiny, and like same with you, if you can't meet payroll and you've already turned down 2 people, you're still not going to feel bad that you turned down 2 people if they were not the right people to turn down.
Correct.
And it's just when you work for yourself, you can afford to think that so business is not this cutthroat thing where it's you eat what you kill and everything you have to kill and then there's stuff left over. Business is, you can craft a life that really optimizes yourself and allows you to give back to the world and the community. And if you shouldn't ever have to do things you don't want to. I mean, sometimes you do. I mean, when you're starting off, like I didn't realize when I started that I'd be doing SEO, but I realized pretty quickly that turned into consulting contracts, right? So you do what you need to do, but you don't ever have to be treated poorly. You don't have to work with people you don't like.
Well, thank you for explaining that. Aha. Oh, one thing that I wanted to ask you about, you talk about how people can do social media in 5 minutes. What does that mean?
First, let's look at the word or the phrase social media. It's 2 words. It's the word social and the word media. Now, when people are first given a camera and first given a microphone, of those 2 words, they ignore the word social and they go, oh, media. I have access to media. And typically, the first thing most people do, and unfortunately still some companies still do this today, is the first thing they do is they say, look at me, I'm pretty cool. If you just saw my product, you would buy my product. It's kind of like this little kid in a Target store and the guy behind the counter with the microphone to the store says to your 6-year-old son or daughter, hey, typically son because daughters aren't that bad. Hey, you want to say something? And what does the kid say? Look at me, I'm cool. You could hear me, right? And, that doesn't get people to know, like, and trust you. It might get them to know you, but then it might get them to dislike you and not trust you, right? So the word media does not mean, just because you have social media, it doesn't mean you're supposed to go out there and tell people how cool you are and that they should hire you. 80% of what you do with that word, that phrase, should be focused on social. So I'll give you an example. So to do social media in 5 minutes a day, whether it's 5 minutes or 50 minutes, what I would suggest is you spend 80% of your time doing the important stuff. So wake up in the morning, spend 1 minute sharing 1, 2, or 3 pieces of content. So if you were consuming content the day before, pick 1, 2, or 3 things you like. And this is where I'll do a quick plug. Go to AHAThat.com. We have 50,000 pieces of content for free you could share, right? So just share a piece of content. So that's what you do in the first minute. Then you go away for a couple hours, come back in the afternoon and spend 4 minutes, which is the 80-20 rule, 80% of your time touching the people who touch your content, right? Because what happens if you're in a physical office and somebody brings you coffee or somebody brings you your printout from the printer? If somebody brings you coffee in the morning, you're going to look up and you're going to say thank you. Well, what happens if the first day they just bring you coffee or bring you your printout and you never look up? And the second day, the same thing happens. The third day, that happens. That fourth day, they're not going to bring you the coffee or the printout. And don't tell me it's because it was Saturday and you're not at work.
If it was me, it wouldn't happen the second day.
Yeah. So what happens is, on social media, we share good, compelling content and somebody says, hey, that's really cool. This is what I think about it. And then you ignore them. How many times do you have to ignore them before they just don't touch your content anymore? So you want to do social media, focus on being social. 80% of the time should be interacting with the people who interact with you.
Aha.
You got this. We got it. It took a while. It's like the 5th time, but now you're trained. This is good.
Well, just in time. Mitchell, can you tell everybody where they can find you on the various social medias? And also hit your websites again, please.
Yeah. Oh, well, you know what I'll do? Just to make it easy, I'm going to give you one generic website you can go to. So it's MitchellLevy360.com. So it's my name, MitchellLevy 360.com. Yeah, it's 3 L's in a row. What you'll see there is you can see a quick 2-minute testimonial video of what customers have thought about working with us. It'll go directly to the social media site. So if you play on LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever site you play on, feel free to connect to me there. And if this was interesting enough for you that you want to at least explore having a book written for you, you could book time directly in my calendar and we'll talk about your situation. And so that's MitchellLevy360.com.
Gotcha. Now, just then you were talking about the various social medias, and you used the word play instead of the word work. How come?
If work equals play, you could play all the time.
Aha!
Fascinating.
Mitchell, before I let you go, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about?
No, this was I'm not going to use fascinating. This was a uniquely interesting interview.
How dare you?
All right, this was a fascinating interview because you've learned from the people who do improv. You've been able to listen and direct. Sometimes you've allowed quick answers. Sometimes you're allowed long answers. And then you pick the most important element, having done your research ahead of time. So you bring in the right element. So I thought this was actually beautifully executed. And I just think the way you and I talk, I heard you with some of your other guests, you just seem to be pretty straightforward, pretty clear about who you are and what you do. And if you're listening to this, I think, and I'm really a big fan, if you could make work fun, right? So if you can't make work fun, what I would encourage you to do is potentially find a different thing to do. And I'll just leave you one last thing. And this is what happens a lot of times. Do I have 2 minutes or do I need to do this in 30 seconds?
Take your time. Draw it out. I want to hear all about it. Get detailed.
This is my next TED Talk I'm working on. It's going through life with a series of sponsors. I won't go through the whole thing, but I'll do the 2-minute version. So a lot of times I am in Silicon Valley. I've talked to at least 30 or 40,000 engineers, and they often will say to me, Mitchell, I'm an entrepreneur. How do I start? Like, okay, that's an interesting question to me, right? As you could tell for you, guy who washes window, how do you start? You just do it. And so I'll ask one question, and then depending on the answer to the first question, there'll be a second one. So the first question I'll ask is how many hours a week you work. If it's 80 or more, I can't ask the second question. But if it's, let's say, 70 or less, the second question is how many hours do you spend towards your entrepreneurial effort? You'll be surprised of how many people say none. I'm going to wait till I quit.
Yeah, I'm going to write that book next year.
I used to be polite. Now I'm like, you're not an entrepreneur, so please keep your job. And I actually say that directly. They go, yeah, sure I am. I said, listen, if you were an entrepreneur and you're working, I had a guy who was working 30 hours a week who had no free time to pursue his entrepreneurial activities because he was working 30 hours a week and making $150,000 a year working 30 hours a week. I said, listen, you're not an entrepreneur. Keep your job, right? Because if you're an entrepreneur, if you're working 30 hours a week, you'd be spending 20 hours a week doing your entrepreneurial thing.
Oh, at least.
Because, yeah, exactly. Thank you. So the reason why is because, and this is what to think about. If you hate your job today, the one thing you could do is you could say to yourself, wait a second, they're my financial sponsor. It's not my job. It's not my living. It's not my profession. They're my financial sponsor. And they're paying money to put food and shelter, hopefully a little bit left over for vacation and saving for retirement. And what I can do with my spare time is I can then start looking for the next thing I need to do. And guess what? You're looking for your next thing or you're looking for your entrepreneurial thing, but you're doing it with a financial sponsor in your back pocket. And if you look at it that way, work would be so much easier to tolerate for many people.
And it is way easier to do the things you want and to do the things you love without fear when you have a financial sponsor.
Ding, 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 ding.
All right, Mitchell Levy, the AHA guy. I do really want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day and your busy schedule to let us get to know you a little bit better on Fascination Street. I really, really appreciate it, and I had so much fun talking to you, and I feel like I learned a lot.
Thank you. I could tell that if you were in my neighborhood, I would hire you in a flash.
Ha! Well, I can tell that if you were in my neighborhood, we would be having drinks tonight.
That's probably true as well.
Awesome. Well, Mitchell, again, thank you so much, man, and I want you to have a great rest of your day. I know you have meetings for the rest of the day, so hopefully they're as much fun for you as this one was for me.
Oh, thank you. Can I say many of them are, but this one was pretty special, so thanks so much.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Mitchell.
All right, take care, everybody. Bye now.
Bye-bye. As always, thanks for listening, Streetwalkers. And don't forget, follow the show on Twitter at FascinationSTPD, on Instagram at Fascination Street Pod. Follow the podcast page on Facebook at Fascination Street Podcast. And of course, you can always email me at FascinationStreetPod@gmail.com. And if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and rate us on iTunes. For the next 3 months, everybody who rates and reviews the show and sends a screenshot to fascinationstreetpod@gmail.com will get a free surprise gift mailed to them. Every single one of you. So do it. Thanks, Streetwalkers. Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2014 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is Apollo from the 2001 album Into the Known by the band Sapphire. Thanks for hanging out with us and getting to know a little bit about our guest. We'll see you next time on Fascination Street.